Welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. I am here with another preview episode as football season continues on. Today I'm joined by Brendan Moore from Spartans Illustrated. We're going to talk a little bit about Prairie View A&M, which is MSU's next opponent for Saturday, and then kind of break down what has gone well for MSU in their past couple games and maybe kind of what things they need to clean up and maybe what they can do to use this Prairie View game looking ahead to harder matchups. How are you today, Brendan?
Doing good. Excited that football season's finally underway. 2 games in. Season's going to go by really fast. So yeah, looking forward to this Prairie View A&M game coming up Saturday. Definitely some things Michigan State needs to work on. So not going to be a super challenging opponent, but we'll get into some things that they need to work on.
Yeah, let's jump right in. So, Prairie View A&M, coming from the Southwestern Athletic Conference, or the SWAC, which I kind of like that name, um, coming up from Texas to play kind of a much bigger school of Michigan State. Any points about Prairie View that Michigan State fans should know?
Yeah, well, they have not been able to run the ball very well so far this season. I think in their 2 games that they've played, they have not rushed for over 3 yards a carry, I think was the stat I saw. So this team not a very dominant rushing team, and the teams that they played were both FCS opponents. So it's not like they played like Georgia and Alabama. They played Texas Southern and Northwestern State. They split those 2 games, so they're 1-1. One name I get if you're looking for a player that Michigan State might have a little bit of trouble defending, it's going to be one of their wide receivers. His name is Shamar Savage. Uh, he's 6'4", 220, so he's 6'4", so he's got height on some of these Michigan State defensive backs, right? He's averaging a little over 20 yards a catch, so he's a big downfield threat as well. Has 238 receiving yards already. Was the leading receiver for Prairie View A&M in both games so far. So if there's a guy to watch out for when Prairie View has the ball, it's probably going to be Savage. So number 1 on Prairie View A&M's offense, Shamar Savage, is probably the guy to watch. Prairie View's defense gave up a lot of points in both games that they've played. In a loss to Texas Southern, gave up 27. In a win to Northwestern State, they gave up 31. So defense has been a little iffy thus far, but yeah, I'm expecting a big Michigan State win. But like I said, I think Savage is a guy that might give Michigan State some trouble.
I think this is a good game after a tough kind of nail biter road win after Maryland for Michigan State to come home, focus on some of those things that maybe didn't go as well in their first 2 games, and really get and kind of grind those things out before they head into other games. Anything else you want to add about Prairie View before we move on?
Their quarterback situation was a little weird in the first game. They had 2 guys that I believe played about equal
I
snaps.
saw
Both
that.
had 20
Yeah.
passing attempts, but second game they went with Peters. So I'm guessing they're going to probably stick with Cameron Peters, who's not a big run threat. Just looking at the stats, or he's the bigger one run threat out of the 2 quarterbacks that played in the first game. So he can use his legs a little bit. Has a little over 30 rushing yards this season, so not a huge threat with his legs, but by the looks of it, looking at the box scores, looks like he has that ability to be a little bit mobile. He's a little over 50% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. So quarterback position shouldn't be too big of a challenge for Michigan State's defense to handle, but Cameron Peters I would imagine, is going to be the guy that's going to get a majority of the snaps for Prairie View.
Okay. Okay. Do you know what year is he or how long he's been playing at Prairie View? I didn't look that
He's
up.
he's a junior. Yeah, 6'4", 207
Okay.
junior. He's in-state guy. Uh, Looks like he did not record any stats in the past couple of seasons, so this looks like it's his first year starting.
Okay. All right. All right. Um, I'm excited to see them come to Spartan Stadium. We'll see what they have to bring. I'm excited. I mean, Savage is a cool name. So you'll hear it on the loudspeaker a couple times, and I could give a clap for that just because it's a sick name. But anything else about Prairie View?
I mean, I guess it is significant that they're an HBCU school, and this weekend, Michigan State Hall of Fame induction ceremonies this weekend, and they're the 2 teams that are entering the Hall of Fame for Michigan State football, the 1966 national championship teams going into that Hall of Fame. So that's kind of a cool tie there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's a great fact, Brendan. Okay, so talking more about Michigan State now, what has gone well in their past couple games? Obviously, we saw them grind it out at Maryland, and I was very impressed with their performance on the road. It being Jonathan Smith's first time and kind of a new squad put together, that they were able to kind of get that done. But what has gone well for them so far from your eyes?
Yeah, I guess I'll start on offense. I think Aiden Childs looked much better in week 2 versus what he looked like in week 1. And one of the common themes that Jonathan Smith has been saying throughout like the entire offseason since he got to Michigan State was this team is going to improve from week 1 to week 2 to week 3, week 4. Or at least that's the goal, right? And they definitely improved from week 1 to week 2, especially Childs. He's young. He's going to make his mistakes. But as long as he doesn't make the same mistakes over and over again, that's fine with me. Like I'm willing to accept some of those mistakes he makes. Like I thought he made much better decisions in game 2. He missed some throws downfield, and that resulted in some picks. But again, I thought he made better decisions. But yeah, turnovers need to be a little bit controlled, a little bit more down for Childs, I would say. That's another thing he probably needs to improve on. But yeah, I've liked the way Childs, he's shown off his arm strength a lot. He can throw the deep ball really well. Just accuracy is a big thing with him. Run game, I've honestly been impressed with what I've seen out of K'Ron Lynch Adams. Uh, He's gotten 11 less carries than Nate Carter, but he has 40 more yards, averaging 7.7 yards a carry compared to Carter's 3.6. Now, it's only a 2-game sample size, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Lynch Adams should get all the carries or whatever. But I think you have a true 1-2 punch really at running back. If one guy needs to rest a little bit and throwing the other guy, I think, and they have a little, I mean, they're similar, but they have enough of a difference in skill sets. I think Lynch Adams is more of a bruiser than Carter is. So they have a little bit of variety in skill sets there. So I really like those two in the backfield. Hopefully Carter can get it going a little bit more. Obviously Nick Marsh, he's been the one that stood out the most offensively, I think, especially against Maryland. Uh, didn't do much against FAU, had one catch, didn't play a whole lot, but really stepped up against Maryland. They threw him in there for a lot of snaps, and he really responded. Just under 200 receiving yards, Big Ten Freshman of the Week. So he's been really impressive. Does not look like a freshman at all. Offensive line, I do think there's some things to work on there, and it's tough because there's some new faces and they haven't played together yet. So it's going to take a little bit of time for the offensive line to gel. And plus, they're down a starting right guard in Phillips, who's out for the year. So depth is already kind of being utilized at the offensive line. Some new faces, so maybe there's some chemistry, not issues, but still some kinks to work out there. But offensive line, they've had some bright spots, especially kind of in the outside run game. There's been some room, I think, for Lynch Adams and Carter. But yeah, overall, I think I think I've been impressed with the offense so far. I mean, especially some of the young guys.
It's so crazy that the guys that we're talking about the most are literally 17 and 18 years old. And that makes me so excited. Obviously, this season is exciting. Jonathan Smith's first year, they're putting things together. But I'm more excited to see where their ceiling actually is because I don't think we're seeing anywhere close to that right now. They're just getting their footing and just getting started. So, something to think about more for the future rather than just this season. But it's promising. I mean,
Absolutely. And one thing I did the takeaways article for Michigan State's win over Maryland, and one of my takeaways was for better or for worse, Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh. Those are the two that are going to define the rebuild the most out of this whole entire group of players, really. So for better or for worse, I mean, there's going to be some growing pains, like I said, but I think these two have a very bright future for Michigan State.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's been fun to watch so far, and we've only had 2 games. So if they can continue to improve every week, I mean, that's a great sign for the future and for this season specifically. So, talking a little more about maybe what things that you've seen that need a little more work and things that they can maybe specifically target with this Prairie View game. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess penalties is a big one. Like the penalties did not really improve a whole lot between the FAU game and the Maryland game. So interested to see. And I know they've addressed it in team meetings and practice and whatnot, and they have like their own internal system they use to kind of discipline penalties. But yeah, I'm looking for that to improve. Prairie View A&M, from just looking at the box score, they're a very heavily penalized team. So there might be a whole lot of flags on Saturday. It might be something interesting to watch for. But Michigan State reeling in the penalties a little bit. The turnovers are going to be key as well, kind of reeling those in because yeah, might not have bitten them against Maryland, but once you go up against some of these better teams, especially teams with really good defenses, like in Iowa, like a Michigan, some of these teams with really good defenses, you're going to need to maximize every offensive possession you get. So these turnovers, especially in the red zone, when you need to come out with at least 3 points, if not 7 points. Uh, Turnovers are going to be a big key as the season goes on. So turnovers and penalties are the two big ones for me. Uh, but yeah, those are the big two ones. Anything you got in mind?
Well, I think those things are specifically important because those are fixable things. Because there are going to be some things that I think we see when we face up with those bigger schools that are going to be unfixable things just because they're a new team. They don't have all the talent in there that they want. Jonathan Smith is still figuring things out. I feel like some of those things aren't fixable week to week. They will grow, like we said, like Jonathan Smith said too. You'll see them get better and better, but it might not be a this season fix. Those couple of things that you mentioned are things they can talk about and things that they should be able to diminish or fix altogether, with the guys that they have, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So I think those are good points.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like talent, there's no amount. I mean, like talent isn't going to magically fix penalties. I mean, you don't need
Right.
talent to avoid penalties. That just comes with mental discipline and,
Yeah.
and using right technique and stuff like that. So I completely agree with what you say.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that you want to say about Michigan State's last two games, kind of before we maybe take a look at season outlook overall?
Yeah, I guess we really didn't touch too much on the defense. I've been
Yeah.
thoroughly impressed with what I've seen from the defensive line. Now, they were the position group I probably had the most questions about because of those spring transfer portal losses like Derek Harmon and Simeon Barrow. I thought, okay, now what's really the ceiling's definitely going to drop for this defensive line and what they can produce on the field. But how good is this depth going to be? This depth is going to be really tested. And I thought they've looked good through the first 2 weeks. Now they haven't played like world beaters on the offensive line yet, like FAU. Not a very good offensive line. Maryland, uh, 5 new starters on the offensive line, so they haven't really faced a true tough test on the offensive line yet. I think their first test will be against Boston College, who pretty much dominated that Florida State game. I know Florida State's 0-2, but there's still some talented players on that defense. So that Michigan State D line against Boston College O line, I know that's something for next week to preview, but that'll be a fun matchup to watch. But for this game, I think this defensive line should do really well against Prairie View A&M. I think they should be in the backfield a lot. Uh, I thought Bogles looked good. I think he leads the team in sacks right now from that rush end position. But overall, Ken Talley's made a lot of plays as well from defensive end. Interiors made some plays. Daquan Dowse had that safety in the first game. So the defensive line has really made more plays than I probably would have expected going into the season.
Yeah, I've been impressed with them too. Like you said, there were a lot of questions and a lot of guys that we just didn't know much about. Obviously, positives coming out of, summer training and all of that. But I think they've been tested a little bit here and there. Maryland more so than, FAU, but I'm excited to see them, like you said as well, in some higher level games because then we'll really see them be tested. But I think Prairie View again is another chance for them to work out some of those kinks since there are new faces on the defense more than the years before.
Yeah, and another thing with the defensive line, maybe something to watch. There's been some injuries in the secondary. Khalil Majid, Dylan Tatum, Chance Rucker. Uh, so the defensive line, they might need to step up maybe a little bit more to try to relieve some of that pressure from that secondary. Because what helps the secondary? Getting the quarterback to hurry up through his progressions, get him uncomfortable, get him up moving out the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And even better if you can get to the quarterback and tackle him for a sack or a tackle for loss. So I'm
Yeah.
interested to see can that defensive line step up maybe even more and perform well against Boston College, against Ohio State, against Oregon, some of these other tough teams that Michigan State's going to play because of those injuries in the secondary.
Yeah. Let's zero in a little bit more on the Boston College game. Do you have any thoughts on that right now? Obviously, I know that's not up next, but I've watched them play a couple times and they seem like they're pretty good. flying out there to Boston College, it being in another away game for this squad? What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, I watched Boston College in that Florida State game. Did not watch them in the. I think they played Duquesne last week. I think they shut them out. So I think the defense is really good for Boston College. Now they haven't played a great quarterback yet. They'll play a decent one this week against Missouri. So I think we'll know a little bit more about the Eagles after this weekend. But I like their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. Now he's not going to beat you a whole lot with his arm, but what he does bring to the table is a dynamic running ability. So Michigan State's got to keep that in check. And I look at uh, that game against FAU where Michigan State struggled a little bit against Cam Fancher. And when Fancher used his legs, I thought there was some space there. I know Michigan State helped them a little bit with the penalties, but I think Castellanos, if he gets an open space, Michigan State's defense could be in trouble there. And that offensive line really bullied Florida State, the line of scrimmage in that first game, which I was not expecting to see. So yeah, I think that BC offensive line's got to be one of the better ones in that conference. So I'm curious to see how they match up with Missouri this weekend, and obviously eventually Michigan State here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that was a little bit of a tangent, but season outlook for MSU overall. Do you have predictions just based off what we've seen so far? I know, like you said, not a huge sample size, but any opinions early in the season?
Yeah, I think this team's definitely good enough to make a bowl game. Now, my prediction before the season was 6-6, so I definitely think they can make a bowl game now, especially after that win over Maryland. Because I originally had that as a loss, kind of on my season predictions going game by game. I had that game as a loss, but I ended up winning that. Uh, but one other thing, I think the games against Iowa, which is at home, and the game at Michigan have all of a sudden become maybe more winnable than they were just last week. Because you look at Iowa, that offense doesn't look like it's improved, and if it improved, maybe just a little bit. So they lost. They choked a double-digit lead against in-state rival Iowa State last week. So that game's going to be at home for Michigan State. They're going to be coming off a bye, and if the offense can put up points against a tough Iowa defense, I think that game could be really close. It could end up being really close. So I think the Iowa games all of a sudden become a little bit more winnable. Same thing with Michigan. That offense, that quarterback play, uh, not up to the level that I expected it to be going into the season. Now we kind of knew they would drop off a little bit because of all the talent that they lost, the coaches that they lost to the NFL. So Michigan, with the struggles offensively, now there's still over a month for them to kind of figure it out before the MSU game. But if that offense doesn't improve, I think Michigan State has a realistic chance of winning that game. Now they're going to be an underdog, that's for sure. They're going up against a good defense, that's also for sure. But I think there's a small chance that they're going to win, but a bigger chance after what I saw uh, against Texas.
Yeah, yeah. Watching that game made me realize that it is within reach after seeing, you know, how Childs and some of those guys stepped up against Maryland. Kind of the disparity between those two games made me realize that it might be a closer game than what I had originally thought. So I agree completely about those two specifically. Going forward, especially having Iowa at home. I just think that's a bigger deal too. Michigan, in Ann Arbor is just another element to it, so that will play a role, I think, as well. With a young
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, never played in an environment kind of like the big house, so I think that will play a factor. But I'm excited for those games more than I was before after kind of some positive performances.
Yeah,
Anything
and,
else you want to?
and
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
even if you want to throw the Oregon game into that category as well, I mean, they have not looked good. I mean, they've won by 10 against an FCS team in Idaho. Honestly, if you that Boise State game, the Broncos probably should have won that game. If you simulate that game probably 10 times, Boise State probably wins 6 or 7 because the Oregon had two return touchdowns. I think one punt and one kickoff. That thing is not, you can't do that. That's not sustainable over the course of a season. So I thought Boise State outplayed Oregon last week. Now Oregon, like I mean, they still got a couple of weeks to kind of figure it out. But then they play Oregon State this week, their first road game. But yeah, we have not seen a high quality Oregon team yet. Now they're very talented, but that Oregon game, I know it's on the road, I know it's on the West Coast, but all of a sudden that game might creep into the not likely, but maybe somewhat winnable category. So
Yeah, yeah, I like it. You know what? We're gonna win the whole season. Why not? Just kidding.
every
But
game's winnable.
I mean, you never know. Right. Every game is winnable. That's a good quote, Brendan. Okay. Do you have a specific game score prediction for Prairie View?
Ooh, put me on the spot because I haven't thought about this yet. But I think Prairie View will get some points. I don't think it'll be a shutout, just because I think Michigan State will get out to a lead early. Uh, I think Childs will hit a few downfield passes, a few explosive passes. Uh, I'll go with like a 48-7 type of game.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, that was, I mean, that's around where I would expect you to say. So that's great. So Michigan State takes on Prairie View on Saturday in Spartan Stadium at 3:30. It looks like the game will be on Big Ten Network if you're watching from home. Brendan and I will be at the game, so everyone wave up at the press box at Brendan. He'll make sure to wave back to each of you individually. He won't miss a single fan. He'll be
Nope.
signing autographs after the game as well, so check for him outside the locker room.
You can sell them on eBay
Anything
for
else?
$2.
Yes, $2. I mean, make it
I,
five. Why not?
I've never sold an autograph before, so I got to keep myself humble. I got to keep
Yeah,
that NIL
yeah.
value a little bit low, and then we can work our way up.
Yeah, yeah. You want to gain a fan base first at the $2 level, and then you raise the price.
Like I don't want to be the 3-star high school recruit that's asking for millions of dollars. Like that's not me. I'm
Right. You're
keeping myself
humble.
humble.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. You're right. I got ahead of myself. Anything else you want to say about Saturday? I think we've covered it really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll
Um,
be. I know the game probably won't be close. At least I'm not predicting it to be close, but I think it'll be a fun environment to be in,
yeah.
especially with Darquez Denard getting inducted in the Hall of Fame this weekend. The
Mhm.
1965, 1966 football teams getting inducted, so it's really a weekend of celebration for Michigan State football,
Yeah.
and they're looking to keep their undefeated season alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's supposed to be good weather as well. Maybe a little hot, but not rainy and not snowy. So I think that's great for a September football game. Well, thanks so much for joining, Brendan. It's been great to have you on. Um, I will tag Brendan's socials down in the description of the episode if you want to follow him and his work with Spartans Illustrated. And with that, check out Spartans Illustrated. We're covering tons of football, lots of stuff almost every day on the site. And as we creep a little bit closer to basketball season, we'll be starting to cover there as well. So subscribe to Red Cedar Radar on YouTube and check us out wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you next week. Bye.